and I am going to welcome everybody who's here. It is just after noon Eastern Standard Time. Thank you all for being here. My name is Blake Cohn, if I don't know you. I'm the Executive Director of the National Network of Schools in Partnership, and we are really excited to have Adam and Susan here from Winchester Thurston. They are going to share with us, or Adam's going to share with us, City as Our Campus, just a look at how they are using the resources around them to enhance their academic offerings and the research that they are conducting that goes side by side with that. There are supposed to be up to 20 people here today. So when we get to the question and answer component, if it is too crowded to ask questions, we will use the chat function, which you can find at the bottom of the bottom bar. It's a little message like a texting box. And then you type in your question and Adam will be able to see them and respond to them. But hopefully we'll be able to interact. 20 is just on the cusp of being a few too many people for this webinar format. But anyway, Adam, I'm going to let you take it away. Thank you so much for being here and sharing what you're doing. I will ask all the participants while he's presenting if you could mute. That helps with the audio quality for everybody. So thanks for being here, and I'm really excited to share your work.
Great, thank you, Blake, and thank you everyone else for joining us today. My name is Adam Nye. I'm the Assistant Head for Educational Strategy, as well as the Director for City as Our Campus. And I just want to point out that Susan Freudenberg, our City as Our Campus Coordinator, is also on the call, and when we get to the question and answer, she might chime in and help to answer some questions. So again, thank you for everyone for being here. I'm going to run through what City as Our Campus looks like for us, the reasoning for creating the program, and then, as Blake mentioned, share some research that we've been doing with the University of Pittsburgh. So before I get started, I just wanted to share our mission statement. Winchester Thurston is located in Pittsburgh. We have about 700 kids pre-K to 12. We just entered our 133rd year. And so, we have a history of doing community-based learning in different iterations throughout the school's history, and I'll talk a little bit about that, I think, in a minute. Before I get too far, I always like to just, kind of cover what is community-based learning, what's the definition that we use. So for us, it's the authentic application of classroom learning to help our students address and consider problems that they see in their community and in the city. Incorporating the community and its resources is part of the educational experience, and through that, utilizing learning pathways. So the idea that the school can serve as a hub for learning, and through that, we can connect students to different learning institutions and learning environments throughout the city and help them understand that if they have an interest in something, they can pursue that not only at school, but in multiple places within the city. And then finally, we hope through all of this work that we are, offering some sort of benefit back to our community so that we can help to create positive change in our community. And the way that we talk about City as Our Campus, it's anytime that we engage, utilize, and study the community. So engaging community partners as co-educators in the classroom, utilizing community spaces as learning environments outside of the classroom, and then studying and addressing community issues. Something that's slightly different about City as Our Campus from other community-based learning programs. It's fully integrated into the core academic curriculum, so it's not a standalone program. It's more like a philosophy of teaching and learning that we try to embed in just the daily experiences of our students. And because of that, it looks very different depending on the teacher in the classroom and the group of students and the curriculum that the teachers are trying to teach. And I'll talk in a bit about how teachers can utilize it in a way that makes sense for them. So back in 2002, when the program was just starting, our head of school at the time, Gary Niels, was asking the question, what makes us unique? Winchester Thurston was in a tough financial situation. We had low enrollment. And for years, our school's location was always seen as a detractor. We're in a dense residential neighborhood. We have a very small footprint. Our peer schools have beautiful, sprawling campuses with large facilities that we just can't compete with. And so we were trying to figure out, what makes our school unique? What is the reason why people would want to send their students to our school? And we realized that we could change the conversation about the school's location and focus on the incredible resources that are in our immediate neighborhood. So we have a large hospital right in our backyard. We have 2 huge museums just about a mile away. We have 3 universities that are very close to us. And at the time, we had this emerging tech hub that was just a couple miles away. And so we decided to really focus on those resources that we could utilize as part of our schools, as part of the school's educational program. We also realized that this could give us an opportunity to build off of our school's founding credo. So this is the credo that has been with our school since its founding. Think also of the comfort and the rights of others. So most of our school's philosophy is really based on that, and our students know it by heart. We talk about it a lot. And so City is Our Campus could not only help us to change the conversation about the location, but also to really re-emphasize this credo in the work that we're doing. What's interesting is Miss Mitchell, who's our school's founder, the school has always been located in this neighborhood, and she really appreciated that location because of its proximity to some of those cultural institutions. And she tried to encourage her students to utilize those resources as part of their educational experience as well, which is just interesting. And you might hear young children in the background. The lunchroom is right next to me, so I apologize for that. The last thing that I want to share before I dig into City is Our Campus is our philosophy of teaching and learning. This is something that we just wrote and based on feedback from our community. I'll just leave that up there for a minute, but we think that City is Our Campus has really informed this philosophy. As I mentioned, City is Our Campus itself is a philosophy of teaching. And so we're trying to embed kind of the learning and the approach that we've been utilizing City is Our Campus through all of our teaching and learning. And so we try to learn passionately, foster community, embrace diversity, break boundaries, and create change. Okay, so moving on, I'm going to share some information about City is Our Campus, and I'm going to be using some research that we've been doing with the University of Pittsburgh as kind of a framework for this conversation. So we partnered with the Learning Research and Development Center at Pitt 2 years ago to do a 3-phase research project with them to really understand and study the model that we've been using for City is Our Campus. And we did that not only to help to prove that the work that we're doing is important, but also to help other schools to do this work. And so we've developed a toolkit that I can share with Blake to send out with all of you. That's a toolkit of resources on implementing community-based learning. And we really focused, we've completed 2 phases so far. The first phase was really looking at the program model and how it's been implemented over time and the value added of City is Our Campus over traditional teaching and learning experiences. And the second phase is looking on the perceived impact of City is Our Campus on student learning, development, and behaviors, both for current students as well as the past 5 years of alums. So for this next part of the presentation, I'll focus on those first 2 questions, the core components of City is Our Campus and the programmatic values of the program. So the first piece is understanding our progression of learning. And so in lower school, it's really focused on foundational exposure. So introducing our students to their community, the places in their community, the people that they might interact with in their community, as well as their role within that community. And we touch a little bit on the community issues that impact the people and the places that they're being exposed to. In middle school, we add complexity and depth to that. So we really dive in a bit deeper to those community issues to help our students understand how those affect their community and specifically how those issues impact different types of people in their community. And then in upper school, we continue to build on that, but it becomes much more immersive and active. So encouraging our students to actually take an active part in their community to create change. The other kind of programmatic structure piece that I want to share is this continuation of learning experiences that we developed. And we developed this so that not only so that we could have different types of experiences that our students were engaged in, but also so our faculty could have different entry points into the program. And so the moment and expedition are kind of those one-off experiences, bringing in a guest speaker, doing a workshop, going to a performance. The expeditions are off-campus experiences, moving up to slightly more intense experiences like projects or units, which are typically project-based learning experiences that happen within, a week to 6 weeks. And then the year-long studies and courses are just as they sound, year-long studies around a specific issue or topic, and then courses are the same thing, but in the upper school. And then finally, residencies are long-term ongoing partnerships with different community partners that have a significant influence on our teaching practice or the curriculum. And so the idea is, again, that teachers can utilize any of these types of experiences in a way that makes sense for their classroom, but it also gives them a chance to enter in a level that they feel comfortable with. So maybe a teacher has never done community-based learning and they want to start small. Just bring in a guest speaker, get used to working with the cities or campus staff, get used to having a stranger in your classroom, and then try to evolve the experience from there. And we almost always see that when somebody starts small, the project typically evolves into a much deeper, more intense experience. So now I'm going to share the programmatic goals and some examples of student learning experiences. So the first goal is to gain exposure to our city, to understand its culture and history. We want our students to be proud of where they come from, the city's culture, its history, so that they can understand, how the city has changed and evolved over time. So a great example of that is a third grade year-long study of Pittsburgh. They study, again, the culture and history of the city over time. And they visit different culturally and historically significant sites in our city. And they try to look at the forces that have been in play throughout the city's history and how those are impacting the city today. So this is them doing a walking tour of Pittsburgh's historic strip market district. And they, in this particular trip, they study how different immigrant groups help to shape the neighborhood over time. The second goal is helping our students to interact with people who have different viewpoints and stories and perspectives, to understand that a community is comprised of different types of people. So a great example of that is an 8th grade research project. This is kind of like a capstone project for our students. Each student selects a topic that is personally meaningful to them, but it has to be around social justice or environmental justice issues. And they do the research as they would with any typical research project, but we also ask each student to meet and interview someone who is either trying to address that issue in our community or is directly impacted by that issue. We do that so that they understand that there is someone in their community who's either directly working with or again being impacted by that issue, so that it puts a human face to the research that they're doing, and also helps them to realize that they could also be a part of the efforts that are happening in their own community. We also hope that through this work, we are equipping students with new knowledge and skills. This is essentially project-based learning in action. And so in 1st grade, they do a study of urban development, and they look at how their neighborhoods are designed and built. They go on walking tours of different neighborhoods to do observations. They do architecture workshops. And then at the end of this, they pick a place in their community, and then they build that place using recycled materials. At the end of that, they have a lot of conversations about access and inclusion, trying to determine where to place their building or location on a streetscape, having conversations about who can access it depending on where that is, how their buildings or places are designed, and how people can access that. So they build hospitals. I think this is a park in this picture that I'm displaying, restaurants. What's really interesting is we never quite know where the students will take us on this journey. And an example of that is a few years ago, the students forgot to build somewhere for people to live. And that turned into a conversation about homelessness. And the students asked if they could continue to explore that. And so we brought in someone who had experience with homelessness, and the students decided to do a service project around that. And so that was something that we did not expect. It was completely driven by the conversations that we were having with them. And it ended up being a really wonderful and meaningful experience for them. I do have a video, but I'm going to skip that and maybe see how our time goes, and I'll come back. So the program is great for our students, but it's also really wonderful for our teachers. We have fantastic teachers, but we can't expect them to be experts in everything. And so we can supplement their knowledge by bringing in a different community experts to work with them. And I think many of us consider this almost to be on-the-job training, because we have the opportunity to work with so many different types of people who can just who can open us up to new resources as well as expanding our own thinking. In upper school, we have a year-long product development course called Research Science. This year, this is a science course that's asked the students to develop one product over the entire course of the year. The only mandate for the students is that the product has to help someone. And so the students come up with pollution sensors, prosthetics, many different types of products. And the teacher for this course has a lot of engineering expertise, science expertise, but can definitely not provide content knowledge for all of the different projects that our students are developing. And so we pair each student or group of students up with a community mentor who has that specific content expertise that they need. Susan spends a lot of time researching and matching these students up with those mentors. And they come in throughout the course of the year and consult with the students, give feedback on their products, help to troubleshoot with them. And so this is an example. Jack and his partner Jacob graduated a couple of years ago. They're developing a product that is far beyond my expertise, but I'll try to explain it. It's a tool that helps people with dysentery symptoms to easily measure the ingredients for rehydration. And so they worked with a local doctor who's also a parent and an alum, and she consulted with them on how functional it was, how useful it is to the patients. And because of that mentoring, they actually got to go to Uganda last summer to implement their product out into the field. And so having that community mentor, offer that expertise, but also communicate to them that their product is legitimate, is worthwhile to pursue, I think really motivated them to continue that work after graduation. And then finally, through all of this, we hope that our students become active and engaged citizens. So they're taking their learning, while at Winchester Thurston and then going out into the community and doing something with it. And so the best example of that is a course for 11th and 12th graders. This is a history course called Urban Research and Design, where the students spend the entire year looking at urban design in Pittsburgh, kind of the history of development in Pittsburgh, and then they do an in-depth project focused on one development that is currently happening in Pittsburgh. And they do site visits, they meet with various community stakeholders, the neighborhood associations, developers, city officials, and then they propose their own original plans for that development. And we ask them to actually go out into the community and present their work back into to the people who they met with. So they're doing that public presentation in the actual community that they're focused on. And through all of that, the students, they come to understand what it means to try to get community perspective and incorporate that into design, but also just to be more aware of their surroundings. And through that, they become, more committed to their community and their city. And this is just a quote from an upper school student who was in this course last year when we did the research. Let's leave that up for a minute. So as you can see, our students, they are, through this work, they are more motivated to make a difference in their community. And I have some data to prove that, and which I'll share at the end. So that City is Our Campus, very briefly. As I mentioned, every teacher pre-K to 12 participates in a way that's personally meaningful to them and their students. And so there are many different types of experiences happening constantly in our classrooms. Now I'm going to focus on that third bullet. So what is the value added over traditional teaching and learning experiences? We broke that down into 5 categories. So first, the choice and freedom that students and teachers are given to pursue their passions and personal interests directly contributes to a higher level of engagement and excitement in the learning. And similar to that, the authentic processes that the students are engaged in allows them to explore more deeply the complexity to their learning and to what they're learning. And the relevance that they see in what they're learning by being connected to community issues that they can identify with in their classroom, as well as how those issues are impacting community members, helps them to find connection, relevance, and legitimacy to their learning, which ultimately increases their appreciation for the content. As I mentioned, our teachers are also benefiting from this program. Oftentimes it shifts them to become facilitators and learning partners alongside our students, which just changes the dynamic in the classroom. And it also helps our teachers to broaden and deepen their own understanding of different issues. And we hear from our teachers that it's joyful and exciting for them to participate in this work. And finally, Cities Our Campus has helped us to achieve our mission, our goals, our credo, our philosophy of teaching and learning, has allowed our school to shift to a more student-centered approach, and then provided some uniqueness in our Pittsburgh market. And finally, the second phase of the research we just completed last year. I was telling Blake that I'm in the middle of kind of finalizing that report, and we can share that out once it's finalized. But I do have some data that I can share here. This was focused on the perceived impact of Cities Our Campus experiences on student learning, development, and behaviors. And so this is just a graph that shows how Cities Our Campus experiences contribute to the overall education. As you can see, it's very positive. Overall, and this includes the past 5 years of alums, as well as, well, now I guess the past 6 years of alums, and some current students in lower and middle. And this, you can see the breakdown from alums from 2014 to 2018. I share this slide because it's really interesting to see as Cities Our Campus became more prevalent and happening in more places throughout our pre-K to 12 experience. You can see that the positive contribution has increased over time as the program has grown, which I think is really exciting. So we asked our students, our alums and our current students to rate how Cities Our Campus impacted various skills, specifically around 2 domain areas, skills that we saw related to active and engaged citizens, and skills related to successful and productive adults. And so these are the results from the alumni. And these are the results from our current students. So even the lower percentages doesn't necessarily mean that it's not happening. It's just the frequency of it happening in different experiences. What I've come to learn from this research is that the alumni are much more reflective in their experience compared to our current students, because they have the opportunity to look back on their full educational experience at WT. These are some quotes to highlight that. So as you can see, it's helping our students to not only find relevance in their learning, but also to get those practical skills that they feel that they'll need to take that learning outside of the classroom and apply it into their community. We were really interested in understanding how Cities Our Campus influenced their orientation around social justice issues. And so as you can see, many students said that it helped them to see how some groups are treated unfairly, exposed to different situations of inequality, and help them to gain knowledge of people who are different from them. Similar to that, attitudes around different social situations, so understanding others, helping others, taking action to improve their community, contributing to their community. And at the bottom, overall, there is some sort of impact on their belief that they can personally make a difference in their. And again, some quotes to illustrate that. While you're reading that, we did a few in-depth interviews with some alumni who opted into that. And what many of them said was through these experiences, they saw the privilege that they have, and they felt more committed to using their privilege to make a difference in their community. And I think many of these quotes highlight that. And for us, that's a really interesting and important finding of the research that we've been doing. And then finally, we were interested also to see if Cities Our Campus had an impact on their passions and their career goals. And so you can see a pretty significant impact on interests and passions that our alumni pursued after high school, as well as an impact on their career choices and goals in college. And then just one last quote. And I think that's it. I love this picture. We just added this to our website, and I'm trying to use it in every chance that I get. But I just think, I hope that all learning experiences give us as much joy as this child has. So that's everything. I welcome questions or comments. And thank you for listening.
Adam, I wanted to thank you. My name's Luana. It's exciting to see the growth of understanding, skill development, engagement, and all of that over the years as you broke down the data from alumni that have participated over the last, 6 years?
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing. And as I guess City as Your Campus has been incorporated into the culture of Winchester Thurston, and also maybe the teachers have been more engaged in their professional development. Have they been focusing that more? Why do you think there are those changes, I guess, is one of the questions that I have. I have a couple others too.
No, thank you. So I think a few things. So I came on in the middle of 2014. And when I came on, we spent a lot of time trying to determine what was successful about the program and what might need to be changed. And so we made a lot of changes based on what we were hearing from our faculty. And so I think some of those structural changes helped to increase participation in the program. I think specifically introducing that continuum of experiences from the moment down to the course helped our faculty to be engaged in different ways, and to have that entry point in a way that allowed them to become more comfortable with the program. And I think it was a bit of a snowball effect from there. Once we got more teachers to participate, then they helped to spread the word and do professional development with each other, and a lot of faculty sharing across all of the divisions. And so now eventually it just became a part of the school's identity, to a point that teachers, we don't require any teacher to participate, but there's so much energy and enthusiasm around the program that if they're not participating, they're trying to figure out how to participate, because it really has just become a part of the school's DNA at that point. But I am happy to share, if you're interested, we do have a document that outlines all of the iterations of the program.
Oh, wow.
Founding. And so I'd be happy to share that with you if you're interested.
Oh, I would love to see that. I think one of the challenges that schools face is, how do you grow it beyond a program to actually be a part of the culture of the school? Do you all call it a program?
We do, just because it's easier to say it like that.
Right.
but we definitely do emphasize that it's much more of a philosophy and an approach. It's because we don't, there is a lot of confusion from parents. They often ask, how do I get my kid to be involved in Cities Our Campus? And we have to do a lot of explanation around that, that their student already is involved in City as Our Campus, and we try to highlight the ways that they are. But sharing the programmatic goals, I think, has been most helpful for us to really emphasize that this is just an approach and a mindset that we're trying to adopt with our teachers and our students. But we do call it a program just for ease of language. The other thing, I think one of the other important steps that we took was faculty sharing. So we publish everything that our teachers are doing in their classrooms. Each week, Susan sends out an update of what's happening so that teachers can see examples of ways to utilize City as Our Campus. And then we also did a lot of professional development with faculty offering workshops for other faculty. And we really emphasized the importance of failure and flexibility in those workshops. And some of our champion teachers who everyone thinks does City as Our Campus really well, we really asked them to talk about the moments where they thought that they might have failed or could have done something differently. And that, I think, broke down some intimidation and fear around participating in the program so that teachers could understand that they just have to try it, and they just have to kind of try to be flexible in their teaching and be comfortable with allowing an experience to evolve over time. And I think that ultimately increased interest in participating in the program and comfort in participating in the program.
Thank you.
Sure, yeah, thank you.
Adam, this is Doug Lyons. I was for many years the head of the Connecticut Association of Independent Schools, and before that, for many years, head of a school in Connecticut, currently on the NNSP board. First, thank you for a really captivating and, beautifully delivered presentation. Very, very persuasive. One comment and one question. I noticed on the one of the survey charts, one of your lower scores was participation in the political process. And given some of your earlier text, and I say this as I'm the chair of the Planning and Zoning Commission in my town and have been on it for over 10 years. You might consider having kids go to a Planning and Zoning Commission meeting so they understand, what happens to good ideas in development, and they get a look. And of course, what you'd want to do is look at the agendas, because there are some evenings when they're talking about, replacing manhole covers, and other nights where they may be talking about something that will generate a whole lot of community interest and controversy. But the kids might find that a real world activity related to some of the projects that you're doing. And then the question I have, and I hate to ask this question, but I can't resist. Let me preface it by quoting Mark Twain, who said the worst sin in the world is to do the right thing for the wrong reason. Okay, so believing that to be true, I'm curious to know, a number of years ago, 84 of the most elite colleges in the United States signed on to a manifesto stating that they would in fact be looking very seriously, very carefully at applicants who have had participation in community life, who in fact have reached out, beyond competitive sports and AP scores. And I'm wondering whether your program, whether you've noticed that program is appealing to colleges, because it does bring onto their campuses kids who've had direct experience in some pro-social work, and they've been changed by it. Their perspective on who they are, on their privilege, on inequality for them. Some of the things that we speak about, in the ideal freshman class at colleges, these kids they've had direct experience in those values.
Yeah, so we've had to do a lot of communication to colleges about City as Our Campus so that they understand what it is. In the college profile, there is a blurb about City as Our Campus and a list of the courses that are considered City as Our Campus courses. What we've heard from students is that they have, through these experiences, they have been able to find stories that they can tell to colleges. So when they're writing their college essays, when they're
Yep.
sharing a portfolio, they have richer experiences that they can share through those platforms. Our next phase of the research is to take these findings from phase 2, from the alumni perspective, and go to colleges and say, are you seeing this as well? What benefit do you think this has had on the students that
Right.
from Thurston that you've accepted? So that will be, I think, in the next phase of the research.
Well, that's wonderful.
Yeah, thank you for asking that.
There's a hand up. I don't know how to respond to somebody who raises their hand.
Oh, sorry, I can't see everyone's.
So if you go to the chat, there's if you have your hand up, go ahead and speak up.
Hi, can you hear me, Blake?
Yes.
Hi, this is Shagun over at the Park School in Baltimore. Again, thank you, Adam, for the presentation. A couple of questions that I have. One is on your partners in the community and how you source them, and how you sort of strategize around who owns that responsibility, whether it's centralized with sort of you and an office, or to what degree it's decentralized to your faculty.
Yeah, good question. So for a while, it was just me doing it, and now we have Susan Freudenberg, our Cities or Campus coordinator, who's helping. It really depends on the teacher. There are some teachers who have partnerships already in the community, or they've been working with a partner over a period of time, and so they feel comfortable just establishing and maintaining that partnership on their own. Oftentimes, it's a collaboration between us and the teachers, or even students, where they come to us and say, "I'm looking for this specific partner." And we do a lot of research. At this point, we have partnerships with over 100 organizations, and the networks that we have through them, through our alumni and through our parents, is pretty extensive. And so it's easy for us to source and establish those partnerships. But we really don't have, this is the one thing, like there's no streamlined process for this. It's a lot of cold calling and emailing and Google searching, and then reaching out to our networks, as I mentioned. The one thing that we always try to do with every partnership building is be very clear about the goals that we're trying to accomplish through the experience, so that we are finding the right partners, so that they understand what they're committing to. And then just trying to communicate and reflect as we move through the process, so that we can ensure that it's a meaningful experience for both us and the teachers. But I don't have a direct answer to that. It's really just depending on the teacher and the project. One thing that I'll say is, since Susan came on last year, she's been starting to create a database of all of our partners and mentors, so that we can try to decentralize some of that. So if a teacher, we have one teacher this year who needs 18 mentors, that's a significant amount of time for Susan. And so is there a way that we can help the teacher and his students to do some of the research, and then we can just mentor the students to do their own personal outreach to those mentors?
That's great. Can I have just a follow-up question? So you mentioned that you have 100 partners and mentors. Do you? I mean, the word partnership for me is one that I'm trying to define a little more clearly. Do you all have a formal sort of partner agreement or partner, statement that you mentioned? You kind of share these things. Is it something formalized where there's like 2 signatures? The thing that I'm facing is this question of sort of institutionalizing partnerships so that they are sustained. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, again, that depends on the partnership. With most of our larger institutions, for example, the museums, we definitely have agreements with all of them. Most of our, about half of our partnerships are institutions that already work with many different schools. And so they have pretty standardized processes that we can work with through them. With the mentors, who tend to be individuals just, offering their time to the school, we don't have a formal agreement, but we do have a document that kind of outlines the expectations of that mentor, the number of times that we hope that they'll meet with the student, what those meetings look like, what role we hope that they fulfill for the student. So they're not signing anything, but they're at least reviewing that so they understand what they're coming into. And then with everyone else, it's typically more of just like an invoice agreement or a payment agreement if we're paying that partner. And so it's again, a less formal agreement, but at least there's some expectation established around that.
Hi, Adam. This is Guyby out in San Francisco. Thank you again, and great job as always. Super impressive, and lots to be proud of there for sure. So congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm just curious about the research part of interviewing or getting research from other stakeholders with regards to maybe your community partners, parents. Just I'm imagining, the other impact of the program. Obviously, what you're doing with students and alums is should be student-centered as your program kind of promotes, but I'm just curious about the interest of capturing data on other stakeholders. So.
Yeah, great question, and thanks for asking that. The first phase of the research included interviews and surveys from our community partners, and so that was incorporated into the values added piece, and then also helping us to understand how the program model allowed for those partners to participate in different experiences. And so I have, if you're interested, I have additional research that we haven't necessarily made public. It's a lot of research, but I can pull some of that out. Really it was some of the work that I mentioned. So the clear expectations, kind of the different structural things were helpful for them in order, to participate in the program. And then again, the value added that we saw from teachers and students really nicely aligned with the value added that our community partners were saying. And so they appreciated being able to explore different topics with their students in a way that allowed them for flexibility and freedom and choice in doing that work. And then also being their role within the classroom is very much as a facilitator and a learning partner as well. And so again, having that freedom to fulfill that role in the classroom was something that they really valued. Working with an independent school is always slightly different than working with some other learning institutions. And so I think most of them appreciate that. And one thing that I'll note is many of our partners, if they don't have experience working in educational settings, they often use us as guinea pigs because we have that freedom and flexibility. So they might work with us to develop a school program that they can then go out and work with other schools. And so that's just one thing that we heard from community partners that that was one benefit of working with us. But then to your other piece of the question, the third phase, as I mentioned, will focus on how colleges perceive the program. That will include parents as well, how they interpret and perceive the program as impacting their students' experience at the school, but also the reason for sending their student to our school, and if it's influenced any of their approach or understanding of teaching and learning aspects as well.
All right, great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Adam, I have questions, but I didn't want to take up other people's time. What does your schedule look like? Because time is the most critical resource that schools have. How do you accommodate, obviously, getting kids off campus all the time?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. I always forget to mention our schedule. So one of the other structural changes that we made around 2013-14 was a schedule change in our upper and middle divisions. And I can share this as well because it's a little bit complicated, but each core academic class in our upper school meets for a 2-hour block once a 6-day cycle. And that 2-hour block is sandwiched between a 1-hour community time where all students are free and a half-hour lunch. So theoretically, each core academic class could go off campus for up to 3.5 hours once a 6-day cycle. And so that really helped us to accommodate those off-campus experiences. Of course, there's always complications with that. Sometimes courses get scheduled in that community time where students have to go to some sort of luncheon, but overall, it really does allow some flexibility with our schedule. In middle school, we increased all academic blocks to 80 minutes. And most of those academic blocks are sandwiched between half-hour free times. So middle school could go off campus for about an hour and a half.
That's great. My other question has to do with administrative support. to the program, and that you have had multiple head changes from 2003 to now, and how has that impacted the growth of City as our campus, and also how has that impacted your search for your head? Like you have a brand new head of school, right? 2 years, or and how did that impact your search? Because I imagine it's an important component.
Yes, I'm going to answer that question first because I already forgot your first question, so I'll come back to that. So we were fortunate actually to have Gary Niels, our previous head, from 2001 to 2017. So he was a head for 16 years, and he really saw the establishment of the program and has, very strongly supported it throughout its history. And so I think his leadership, and as well as his kind of devotion to resources to the program has helped to establish and sustain it over time. I am the second director of the program. I do have a predecessor. And so I think, we took different approaches to the program. Excuse me. But I think overall, this has almost always been a faculty-driven approach. And so although our previous head of school, kind of gave the mandate or the expectation that we would do more community-based learning, he really put it into the hands of the faculty to figure out what that looked like. And so each iteration has really evolved from what the faculty were doing in their classroom. And so I think because of that, it has roots that are established beyond just administrative changes.
Okay, so then switch my first question. How do you approach hiring faculty if it is so crucial and faculty-driven?
Yeah, I think the number one characteristic that we're looking for is flexibility of thought. I think overall, what you need to be comfortable with doing in your classroom is being willing to be flexible with unknown outcomes. And so that's very different from traditional teaching and learning. And so, I don't think we have a great way of gauging that within people, but it's really conversations about what they, what approaches they're taking in their classroom, the value that they see in student-centered learning, kind of understanding their own philosophy of teaching and learning. One thing that we started doing this year, which I love, is instead of having teachers do demo lessons, we see value in that, but we don't think it, we have thoughts about demo lessons that I won't get into today, but we've asked instead for faculty and even we did this with a new administrator position, we gave them a scenario and we asked them to kind of troubleshoot through that scenario with their with other faculty members to really get to an understanding of how they approach difficult situations, what's their thinking going to those difficult situations, how do they collaborate with different types of people, and that I think is much more illustrative of what their approach is in the classroom. And then back to your question about the head of school, City as our campus was very much front and center when we were interviewing and searching for a new head of school. And we were really looking for someone who had experience with student-centered pedagogy and community-based learning and progressive education overall. And so again, this has become part of our school's DNA, and we're just trying to continue to embed it in all of the work that we're doing and all of the people that we're bringing in.
That's great, thank you. I see Peter has his hand up. Peter, are you there? Peter, are you, do you want, Peter? He put his hand up, but I don't hear him. So anyway, ask away, people, if you have questions.
Doug Lyons again. Adam, are you presenting in Philadelphia for NNSP?
Yes, we are. We have, and Peter, if you want to use the Zoom group chat, I can find you there. Yes, Blake just accepted our proposal. It's a really interesting one. It will have a similar to what I did today, but a much briefer overview of the program. And then I'm very happy to say that I have two teachers joining me. Dr. Mike Narragon, who is the Upper School History and Social Studies Department Chair, who teaches that Urban Research and Design course, as well as our first grade teacher, Desiree Jennings, who teaches that first grade urban planning project. And what's interesting is those two projects are remarkably similar. And so we'll be able to see, and they were also focal projects for the research that we did in our second phase. And so we'll be able to see the similarities between those two projects and how the teachers take different but similar approaches, even at a first grade and a 12th grade level.
Good. Well, I'll be drumming up some attendees from Connecticut.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, so Peter says, my audio seems to be wonky. You mentioned that sometimes partners are paid. I'm wondering how that works, the spectrum of payments, the budgeting, what gets paid and what doesn't. You thought you were going to scoop by that.
This is a question I get quite often. And Guyby, I think he's checked out, but he asked this question last time I presented. We do pay many of our partners. Again, most of our partners they already work with schools, and so they have that kind of structured process and format where we're just another school participating in that program. With some of our partners, specifically some nonprofit partners, we might do a sponsorship of programs that they're offering to other schools. We might pay them directly. Our thought is we are taking the time and resources from nonprofits, and as an independent school that's tuition-based, it's our responsibility to help support those nonprofits. What we try to do is, again, offer funds that directly support their educational programming so that we know that's going to help other schools. And then as far as our mentors, we typically do not pay those individuals who are offering their time to be mentors. They're typically working, people from the corporate world or from tech companies or from universities. And so they often just offer their time free of charge. Many of them are also parents or friends of parents or alumni. So we have those relationships. And then the other thing we do often pay, we work with a lot of independent artists or performers or people who are just kind of freelancing out in the community. And so we almost always pay them as well. We have a fee structure based on the number of hours that they're spending with students, as well as planning with teachers, and then the types of experiences that they're doing. If they're coming in for a 1-hour guest speaker, and it really doesn't require that much prep, they get one payment amount. If they're coming in and doing a very in-depth workshop over 3 hours, then they get a different payment amount. And so I'm happy to share that payment structure as well, if you're interested. The one other thing I'll say about community partners is we never want to be the independent school coming in and saving the community or doing a project just for the benefit of our students. And so we always go into new partnerships by asking the nonprofit, what are you already working on that is a natural fit for our students to contribute to or to build off of? And that helps us to make sure that we are useful to our community partners and not just causing extra work for them.
Aaron, I see your hand up. I feel very good at this teacher role here.
Aaron Stevenson from Worcester Academy. I have a couple of questions. By the way, fantastic, and I'd love to have any resources that you'd be willing to share. Very illuminating, and I think our schools have many similarities. I know that one of my questions, and it relates, is that I know a couple of my colleagues a couple of years ago went down and visited. Right. Do you have? They're no longer here. But I'm wondering about that. Is there a program or how that works out? And then my second question is briefly, and I'm sure it's a very brief answer. What is your relationship to APs?
Yeah, I think, are you asking if we have like a visitor program? Yeah, so we, for 2 years, we hosted the Co-Learn Conference, which was a conference funded from the E.E. Ford Foundation. And that welcomed other schools to come and learn about City is Our Campus. We'll likely do that again next year and move it to a biannual conference. But we are always welcome visitors to come and learn from us. We also go out to other schools and do workshops at other schools. And of course, video conferencing makes it very easy as well. We're always happy to jump on a video or call. We do still have APs in our upper school. Quite a few APs, and we're now at the point where we're asking ourselves, do we want to do APs? Do we want to do as many APs as we're doing? It's a difficult conversation to have, but what we're noticing is there's a lot of tension for our students and teachers when they have to transition from a very traditional classroom experience to project-based classroom experience. You know, for example, it takes a significant amount of work to prepare for a project-based learning course. And so, you know, when we think about teacher workload and, you know, the number of preps that our teachers have, it's not an equitable workload when you have some teachers who teach all APs, some teachers who teach all project-based learning, some who do a mix. And so we have to have some difficult conversations around that. And then also for our students, when they're shifting, again, from a very traditional classroom setting to a project-based classroom setting, it's causing stress for them, and they're telling us that. And so we have to have that conversation, and we're going to start that this year. I think what we'll likely do is maintain the APs that we think are most aligned with our approach, and then try to remove the ones that we think aren't really serving our students well. I don't love that answer, but
yeah,
I think that's where we'll likely end up.
I have a very quick follow-up. AP is starting to realize the value of project-based, community-based learning, and they do have a program called We. I'm wondering if you have any dealings with that part of the AP, because that would be, in theory, a natural way of making them work together.
I do not know that. I'm going to look at that. What we hear from our teachers is they feel like they just want to write their own curriculum. They want to have total control over what they're doing in their classroom, and I hear that. But when we ask colleges, they say, you're a small school in Pittsburgh. You need to have APs at least somewhat in your school. And so, you know, I'm going to look into that, but yeah, we'll continue those conversations.
I can send you that information on that.
Yeah.
Great.
And Peter, sorry, not Peter, Adam, I just got an email from somebody at Andover, and Eric was on this call. I'm not sure he's still here, but she's teaching an AP statistics class with a whole community engagement component that is part of, I think, this new push from AP, I think probably to stay in schools that are looking this direction. And when you get there, I'd be happy to connect you to this teacher to see how she's making it work.
Yeah, sure.
But obviously, yeah. I'm jumping like 17 steps ahead for you.
Oh,
no,
can
yeah.
I chime in? Sorry, I was going to chime in for a second. We're actually doing, with a couple of our APs, we are actually already doing some of that community engagement just on our own, not through the AP system. So our AP stats statistics teacher actually does a speaker series where we get outside partners in. And we also, our AP European History class is also doing the same thing, where the teacher's taking the students to the museum and experiencing the art of the period that they're learning about. We're just trying to find more authentic experiences for the students to have through all of the other APs that we do offer. But it's neat to know that the AP is going that way, because that'll be a great thing for the classes that don't have that yet. So thanks for that.
Yeah, they've had the program, I think, for 3 years, and it's a little bit prescriptive, but not entirely. Mm-hmm.
In the interest of time, seeing it's we've almost used up all of Adam's hour, is there any last question? I would ask Adam if you would be willing to share your slides so that those of us who aren't fast readers and absorbers can go back and you had some really good points on there. And also your schedule was another thing that you said you would share. Yeah, and Simone just wrote the same thing. And anyway, speak up if anything else we want to share, or one last question.
Peter was asking about grants. There was a question from Peter again.
Oh, you're right. I missed that question.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. So yeah, we received an EE Ford grant in the early stages of the program, I want to say around 2004, that helped to launch the program. And what that did was provide seed money to faculty who were interested in doing community-based learning in their classrooms. So provided small grants to different teachers to launch projects in their classrooms. We received the EE Ford Leadership Grant in around 2009, and that helped to hire the first director of the program and to kind of shift the model from a completely faculty-driven program to having an administrator leading the program. And then we received our third EE Ford grant in 2016, and that helped to fund the conference that I was mentioning, as well as the first and second phase of the research that we're doing with the University of Pittsburgh. Throughout all of it, EE Ford has been really asking us to think about sharing this, this work with other schools, and so that's really why we decided to do the conference and the research. And again, I'm happy to, I'll be sure to share all of those resources with Blake, who can share it with all of you.
And I will just tell you that John Gola emailed me yesterday when he saw my email push out saying he was very sorry he wasn't going to be here, but I'm sending him the recording. He's a huge, huge fan. And any of the independent school people on the line, EE Ford is incredibly supportive of community engaged learning programs, institutes. If you're connecting independent schools with your community, they really seem to be ready to help fund it. So it's where there's not really a lot of grant opportunities for independent schools. This is one that in this particular area is very, very profitable for schools. And Aaron's saying an implementation guide and program iteration history also. Yep. I don't know if you saw that. Okay, I'm gonna let you all go because I hate, you guys are so busy as it is. I appreciate your time so incredibly much. This was fantastic. Thank you all for being here. This will be up on both our YouTube channel and on our website by the end of the day. I'll share it out on our social media. Feel free to share it with people who you think would be able to take advantage of this information. And as always, if anybody has any follow-up questions or wants to connect with one another, that's my favorite thing in the world to do. So reach out to me and I will help put you in contact with the right people. And final plug, Adam will be at our conference. It's January 26th and 27th. Still early bird registration going on until the middle of November. We'd love to see everybody there. And our next one of these webinar series is on November 7th. It's with Riverdale Country School, and they are talking about a middle school student council collaboration they have with the public and charter school that are in their area and how they've built that out to be a leadership program, also funded by EE Ford. So anyway, thank you all for being here. I look forward to connecting with all of you soon.
Thanks, Adam.
Thank you, everyone.
See you in Philadelphia.
Yep, see you then. Thank you.